Welcome to the Unlist. Today I want to have a fairly unadorned conversation about counterfeit fragrances. This is entirely different from clones. I know some of you don't see a distinction because you think any form of imitation, including competing designer brands, is a form of fakery, but not all of us have the privilege of living in that world where we can buy everything at full retail price from brick and mortar stores and buy any fragrance we want at any price point we want without really considering our financial situation at all. So unfortunately, clones and counterfeits become a reality for a lot of people in the online fragrance community, especially most of us who are not in that top earning bracket where we can just say, okay, $2,000 to Roja Dove, $1,500 to Spirit of Dubai, $1,000 to Frederick Mall for whatever else. We don't live in that world, so it's good to know the pitfalls of deal shopping. And one of those pitfalls of looking for deals is counterfeits. So for me personally, I think this is very cut and dry. I think the easiest way to separate a clone from a counterfeit is just the clone doesn't attempt to pose as the fragrance it's copying. It might have similar packaging, similar name, it might look sort of like a dollar store version of a fragrance with a bottle and name that is much cheaper but tries to emulate the look and sound. Likewise, clones sometimes also have completely different bottles, but their name is a play on words of the thing it copies. And then in other cases, you have fragrances that have completely unrelated bottles, unrelated names, make no mention whatsoever that they are copying something, yet clearly are clones of something else, right? We see that a lot. So a lot of the Middle Eastern houses, for example, put out fragrances that have names and bottles that in no way, shape, or form resemble anything else. Yet when you smell them, you're like, yep, that's a riff on this, or a take on that. Sometimes with pinpoint accuracy, depending on the house, and in other cases, it can be a variation of a theme, which then some people may argue, well, if it's a variation of a theme, it may not actually be a clone. It might just be a competing fragrance. Good examples include a lot of Rasasi products. They are not necessarily clones of something, but they are definitely trying to take the lunch money of another popular fragrance. So a lot of people compare the Rasasi Hawas line, for instance, to Paco Rabanne's Invictus, but they are much different in many ways, even though they definitely sit in the same wheelhouse, right? Counterfeit fragrances, on the other hand, they are none of that. Counterfeit fragrances are not an honest or earnest attempt at anything. They are, as the name suggests, they are deception. They are made by rubes to deceive and basically take the money from unsuspecting customers that buy them, thinking that they are getting legitimate product. At least when you buy a clone, whether it's our impression of fragrance like Dossier, or a very well elaborated take on a scent like an Armaf or a Rasasi, whichever the case may be, when you buy a clone or an inspired take of a fragrance, you know that when you buy it. And even if you buy a fragrance with completely unrelated packaging and unrelated naming, so you buy something like Rasasi Egra, for instance, you smell it and go, yeah, this smells like it's trying to be XYZ. But even then, it's honestly that fragrance with that name. If that house decided to make that fragrance as close to another fragrance as possible, that's fine. Like I said, they're not saying it's that fragrance, and they are not selling it to you as that fragrance when it isn't. Okay, I think I cannot be any more clear about that, what the intent behind a clone is versus a counterfeit product. Counterfeit product is literally a fake. It is not a clone or an inspired by or something that is made to compete with. It is literally a fake. So all the people that call clones fakes or competing fragrances like Jimmy Choo Urban Hero, again, similar to Invictus, they call it fake Invictus, whatever. That's really incorrect. And you can blow smoke at me and get angry at me in the comments and say whatever you want, get on your hill and die on that hill, whatever. They're not fakes. They're just imitations or competing fragrances in a market segment, but they are not calling themselves Invictus or BR540 or Aventus or whatever. So they're not fake. Counterfeits are actual fake. In some cases, there's not even a real fragrance in the bottle. Sometimes it's literally just alcohol. Okay? So, now, that said, just like clones, counterfeits can sometimes come in different layers of effort, you know? Just like with the clones, you have the low effort ones, like designer imposters or parfums, decor, impressions, whatever, body fantasies. And then you've got the higher effort ones, like Versace, Armaf, Al-Wazam, all those guys, you know, Pineapple Vintage, Intense, etc., etc. Much higher effort, much higher quality. Counterfeit fragrances also have the same basic vibe of low effort, high effort. And the low effort ones are ironically the ones that tend to target the highest brands. And I kind of call this the luxury minimalism paradox, where we live in a society now that thinks more simplistic shapes, cheaper forms, square glass bottles with plain plastic or metal caps somehow seems more luxurious than a decorated bottle with filigrees on it and different kinds of, just shapes and forms. Now, of course, some of you are going to say, but what about Raja Dove? What about? Yes, you do have some of those tacky status flex brands, right, that are up there in that top tier purchase arena, if you will. But for the vast majority of people, they associate luxury with simplistic elegance. And that's really a callback to Chanel and Dior and brands like that who have always championed clean lines, simple shapes, whether it's clothing or bottles of perfume. The brands that like to throw the brass plates and the jewels on their caps and stuff, they are a very vocal minority. The Parfums de Marly, again, the Raja Dove, those kind of heavy, ornate bottles, they are a vocal minority, and they get a lot of attention because they do a lot of yelling, don't they? A lot of influencers push that stuff. But if you go into Macy's, you go into Nordstrom, you go into Saks Fifth, you go into Bergdorf Goodman, you see the vast majority of brands, Celine, Dior, Chanel, Hermes, okay, MFK. I don't have to tell you. Even Creed to an extent. The bottles are simple. Frederic Malle, another one. The bottles are simple. Round, square shapes, cylinders, rectangles, simple caps. Yeah, they might still be metal, like MFK's caps are metal. They might still be heavy, okay? They might have magnets in them, like Dior tends to do. But they're not ornate or decorated. So this is the luxury paradox I was mentioning, where the highest end fragrances a lot of times get the lowest effort counterfeits, because it's really easy to copy a square. It's really easy to copy a cylinder with a simple plastic cap. And because brands like Tom Ford and Frederic Malle and Chanel like those simple shapes, Byredo is another one, because they like those simple shapes and they charge so much money for their products. It's the low-hanging fruit. It's the highest price bracket almost before the Raja Doves, before the Spirit of Dubai, before you crack into that top tier. It's the highest price point for a lot of people. Creeds, same thing. Highest price point for a lot of people, but the lowest hanging fruit for counterfeiters. And this is why I tell people there is a no-buy list from eBay, Mercari, Bonanza, the marketplace sites, Facebook, okay, any places where people, individuals, can put up fairly unregulated sales threads. And that's where a lot of counterfeiters go, because obviously sites like Amazon have more protections. Any kind of actual discounter, like Fragrance Net, Fragrance X, Fragrance Buy, Perfume Canada, Perfume Online Canada, those are distributors. Distributors have much higher security because they're distributors. They buy wholesale. They sell to stores, and then they sell to you online. They don't tend to deal with counterfeits, okay? If they get stung by a counterfeiter, then they go after somebody. They have business insurance, they sue. So all the people who say, oh, don't buy from Droma Shop, don't buy from Fragrance Net, don't buy from perfume.com because they're all counterfeits. I'm like, if you get a counterfeit fragrance from one of those discounters, you'll get your money back, and then they're going to get their lawyers on somebody. So it's not impossible. There isn't a 0% chance that you will die in a freak giraffe stampede accident or whatever. The chance is never zero that you could die that way. But, so the chance is never zero that you could get a counterfeit fragrance from a discounter. I'm just saying, if you do, they're going to take care of you. And furthermore, if you do, they're going after someone, because that's their reputation. They build the reputation on offering those discount prices of these higher end perfumes. But you go to the marketplaces, you go to eBay, and like I said, Bonanza, Mercari, all these sort of places, Etsy. That's where the counterfeiters can really get away with stuff, because they can put their listings on there, set themselves up to look like fairly reputable businesses. They can fake feedback. They can use bot accounts to give them 100% feedback on purchases, They can make themselves look really spiffy. They can put false information. They can fake out their return addresses. And then you just Google map where they're from, and it ends up being like a garage somewhere in Detroit, right? A burned down garage at that. It's not even one that you can dwell in. So like abandoned structures, private residences, whatever. They can do all that stuff to get the account set up and then start peddling their counterfeits. Now, there are entire websites that are fake, but at that point, that's not counterfeiting anymore. There are entire perfume shops that just take your money and give you nothing, right? Those are scams. That is fraud. It's a whole different bracket of thievery at that point. So before you guys say, oh, but what about perfumeorpheus.net or supremescentlord.wthtml whatever .org/perfume.com thing, some crap like that, where if you click on it, your web browser says don't click here, go back. This is like those kind of sites, those fishy backwater sites. Yeah, they exist. They definitely exist, but I wouldn't call those counterfeit perfumes. At that point, the whole damn site is fake. So you're never even going to get a fake perfume. You're just going to get your money taken. And then they're going to hope that you say, oh, well, it was only $50, and then not charge back or whatever. So that's usually how that works. A lot of people are really stupid about that. They let stuff go, or they wait too long. They wait months and then get nothing. And then, you know, they wait to a certain point where their bank may reimburse them, but then the bank loses the money because it's past the statute of limitations. So they might still get their $50 back, but someone is losing that money, even if it isn't you. And those scam sites really bank on that. So, but we're talking about specifically counterfeit fragrances. And my do not buy on marketplace sites, I've named most of them already. Chanel, Tom Ford, Frederick Malle, surprisingly Gucci. You might be thinking, but Gucci bottles are not that simple. They're ribbed, they're adorned. If you're buying the Gucci Guilty fragrances, they have the XG logo on them, and you're right. You're right. You wouldn't think those would be the easiest to fake, but for some reason, I've been stung not once, but twice on fake Gucci Guilty products. So I think with Gucci, the risk versus reward factor is high enough that they're willing to put a little more effort into the fake bottles because they know Gucci has the clout, right? They have the name recognition. They know all the little brain-rotted Gen Alpha wannabe influencers with their big puffy coats and their drip and their neck chains and their words like skibbity and Riz and all that stuff. They're going to run after Gucci because they know that buying the Gucci is going to get them the likes and subscribes and the clicks. So we live in this post-truth, post-reality idiocracy society where a name in and of itself has innate social value, right? So again, the risk versus reward with that is high enough. But typically bottles that are that decorated, like the Gucci bottles are pretty decorated bottles, typically they don't do it. They won't go after anything that they have to put fancy print on or fancy caps on, or in, like I said, with the Gucci Guilty bottle, they have the little G logo like this in the middle. That takes effort. And those brands don't want to spend effort. Those entire counterfeit operations, they don't want to spend the effort on that. So they typically don't. So the Tom Ford stuff, easy to fake. Chanel, really easy to fake. We're talking square bottles with paper labels on them in some cases. The less exclusives all have paper labels on them. And then the stuff that doesn't have paper labels, like the Bleu de Chanel bottles, the Chance, the Coco Mademoiselle bottles, it's print. It's just screen print. I have been burned twice with fake Chanel as well. So I speak from experience here with the counterfeit bottles. And unfortunately, I don't have any examples to show you because I throw them all away. Once I get my money back from eBay or whoever, like I have every single time, I just toss them in the trash. I take photos, and I have photos somewhere on my phone. If you guys really want to see my fake Gucci's and my fake Chanel's, I can dig them up and post them as images on the YouTube channel, but I don't have them handy to show you in video form because they've been in the dumpster, they've gone to the landfill, they're gone. Okay, guys, they're gone. I did keep one bottle of Gucci Guilty, a fake one, because it had some kind of real perfume. I don't know what it was, but it had some kind of real perfume that smelled halfway decent. So it made good bathroom spray. So for like the next 2 years, I was spraying fake Gucci to cover my shits, okay? Spraying it in the toilet. And it worked fine for that. It smelled good, made a good bathroom spray, but it was still a fake bottle of perfume. So that's my no-buy list. Frederick Malle, Byredo, Tom Ford, Chanel, Gucci. Also Louis Vuitton. Same thing. Louis Vuitton, very simple bottles, very easy to fake. And just general, anything that I haven't mentioned already, if it's a high-end brand, an expensive brand, and it has a simple bottle. So basically, if it's expensive and the bottle looks easy to make, easy to duplicate, don't buy it from eBay, okay? If you're someone who collects vintage fragrances or something, you might be able to shop Chanel on eBay, because it takes a lot of effort to fake an old bottle of perfume to make it look old, right? Same thing. Vintage Gucci's, like Gucci Pour Homme from 76 or L'Art de Gucci, same thing. You're probably safe getting it off eBay because you're going to pay a lot of money for it, but it's likely not going to be fake because the demand is not there. And that's the thing. Those people who live in their little world where they think vintage perfumes are so vaunted and so desirable, yeah, they are by a small number of people. A small niche of enthusiasts will pay big money for discontinued bottles of Ho Hong, Gucci Envy, Dunhill Blend 30, old Jean Patous like Colony, okay? So, yeah, there is a small clutch of really deep-pocketed, well-heeled collectors who will spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on these vintage perfumes, but that is a small group. And again, just like with the expensive brass plate bottles and all that, vocal minority, the vintage community is a very vocal minority. In fact, a very aggressive minority of people, and I've made many videos bashing that, so I'm not doing that here. Okay, guys, put your pitchforks and torches away. I'm just saying that your precious, deep vintage bottles of Koros are really much less likely to get faked than a brand new bottle of some Tom Ford garbage that you will never want to smell anyway because you're too busy wearing vintage Koros, correct? You don't care about that new Tom Ford. You don't. And the counterfeiters don't care about your vintages. They're not going to sit there and bootleg a bottle of Ho Hong. They're not going to sit there and bootleg, something like, I don't know, like Lancetti. They're not gonna bootleg that, okay? They're not gonna dupe your Vivienne Westwood fragrance. They're just not. They don't care. You care. That's why they're all $400 a bottle, but they don't care. They don't want that money. It's not enough money on the table for them to go after. Now, from there, the counterfeits do get more sophisticated. Like I said, those low-hanging fruit, high-yield, high-end brands with the simple bottles, like the Tom Fords, the Chanels, those are the ones you can very safely avoid. Just don't buy those from eBay. Like I said, don't buy Bleu de Chanel from eBay. Never buy Bleu de Chanel. Never buy Bleu de Chanel from eBay. Just don't, okay? Don't do it. Even if you think it's a tester, it's got a tester box, whatever, don't. Just don't do it. Or if you do it, be prepared to roll the dice, okay? Papa needs a brand new pair of shoes. Snake eyes, fuck, I got a fake. Time to mail it back. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. Now, from there, they get more sophisticated. Okay, I've seen fake Paco Rabanne Invictuses. I've seen, those are more complicated bottles, like built-in sprayer, stuff like that. I've seen some designers that were faked out, that were more sophisticated bottles, fake bottles of different YSL perfumes, different Paco Rabanne, so on and so forth. But you also have to realize there's an entire market of these look-alike fragrances that have the names on them. And they typically sell in markets where there aren't copyright controls, where there aren't trademark controls. So I don't want to say China and throw them under the bus because I might have Chinese viewers and fans. But I think you already know there's a lot of fake stuff in China. Temu, AliExpress, Shein, Wish.com. I don't think I'm insulting any of my Chinese subscribers by saying that you guys pump out a lot of fake stuff. Not you specifically, but in your country. And it's because of the complete and total lack of really regulation or respect for any kind of international copyright, trademark, whatever. So, and they know that people will buy it. the whole, what, fake it until you make it, right? That whole thing, fake it until you make it. That's why we have the work-in bags instead of the Birkin bags. You got the fake ones from China, which they call them working man's Birkin bags. So work-in bag is what they call them. It's a joke. But same thing, you got the work-in bags. You've got the fake iPhones that are running some kind of Android or whatever. So same sort of thing. You'll have fragrances where it's Pucco, Raybone, and Voctus or something. It's one letter different. Pucco, Raybone, and Voctus, and the bottle looks the same. The cap looks the same. The bird is maybe upside down or something on the box. But they do a quick little oopsie daisy to it, and they go, oh, look, it's different. Then you spray it, and you smell it, and it's like mostly alcohol, diluted down to the point where it barely has a smell. But you paid like $10 for it, right? You paid $10 for it, so they gave you exactly what you paid for. They gave you a $10 counterfeit of Paco Rabanne Invictus that is Pucco, Raybone, and Voctus or whatever, okay? And it's just basically isopropyl alcohol with a bit of hand sanitizer in it, and it smells a little bit vaguely like Paco Rabanne Invictus, but it barely does anything. Now, I will close this out because we're getting close to the end here. Refills. I consider refills counterfeit because they're real bottles that were bought or stolen somewhere, and they had their contents removed and replaced with fake juice. Refills, in my mind, count as counterfeits because it's still fraud. It's still an attempt to defraud the customer, to take their money and give them something that they can't use. Okay? Like I said, some of the counterfeits have real perfume in them, so you can theoretically use them. You can theoretically enjoy what they are if you just happen to like whatever they put in the bottle. If you just happen to like it, you luck out. You get some kind of perfume. It's not the one you wanted, but you got something. Most of them are not. They're just water. They're watered down. They're real fragrance that's been watered down, that's been cut, or there's something else. The refills are how they do this. Buy a real bottle of something. Let's just say Egoist. Suck all the real juice out of Egoist. Now it's empty bottle. Use a needle to inject a cut version of the fragrance back into it. Take maybe a tenth. So 10 mils of what you pulled out of the bottle. Put that 10 mils back in. Squirt in alcohol the rest of the way. Put it back in the box. Seal it back up. Looks like a real bottle of Egoist. Has the cellophane on it because you can re-cellophane boxes, my friends. Oh, yes, you can. You can re-cellophane them. You buy it. You get it. It looks real. It is real. Then you spray it, and it feels like water or alcohol on your skin. It burns your skin. Has hardly any smell. You, sir, just got a refill. You just got a refill. The rest of that 90 mils that didn't get squirt back into your bottle, what happens to that? Oh, they decant it. They sell it on decant sites. They sell it for 5-10 mils at a pop. Make their money on it that way. Or they take the other 90 mils and shoot it into fake bottles that they've already bought somewhere and then fill those with alcohol. So you get one real bottle with diluted fake shit in it and then 9 fake bottles with the rest of that shit that's been diluted and put back in it. Okay? Or they decant it off, like I said. People run schemes, my friends. You need to know what hustling is. Nowadays, we say hustle culture, and we think of hustling as working, grinding, multiple jobs, doing Lyft, doing Uber, doing DoorDash while having a 9-to-5. That's not hustle, guys. I'm from Baltimore City. I grew up. Real hustling is doing shit on the sly. It's doing shit to make money that's not entirely honest, but makes you a lot of money really quickly. And when you hear someone saying, I respect the hustle, that's like, game, acknowledge game. That's someone saying, I know you're doing a lot of shit on the down low to make a bunch of money. And it takes a lot of work to run that many different schemes. So it ends up being a lot of work. But the amount of money you bring in from all the hustling you do is way more than you would make just working a regular job. So that's respecting that effort, but it's still illegal stuff a lot of times. And even if it's not illegal, it's morally nebulous, ethically questionable stuff. But that's what real hustling is. And let me tell you guys, the people who run all these counterfeit operations, refilling bottles, diluting perfume, whatever, that's hustling. And they make a lot of money. They don't spend very much money, and they make a lot of money. As far as vintage bottles, like splash bottles, being opened up and refilled, yes, that can happen too. So you vintage guys are not entirely safe. Again, the chance is never zero, like the giraffe stampede. Chance is never zero, but the likelihood of someone taking a vintage splash of Koros, Charles of the Ritz, that's been emptied out, it's a completely empty bottle, and putting something else in it, it's very low. And it's because they know the customer of that, the person who's going to spend the $400, $500, $600 to buy that vintage year one 1981 bottle of Koros, they're going to know what it smells like. The assumption is that person knows what they're buying. So if you take a bottle of Koros and you fill it full of alcohol and you mail it to someone, that's an instant comeback. That's going to immediately boomerang on back around. So again, chances aren't zero, but the likelihood of getting a refilled vintage splash is very low, and the people who do it, their accounts don't tend to stay open very long. That's someone who gets chased off eBay very quickly. They can make another account and start over again, okay? When these guys get caught, they don't stop. They just rebrand and start over. But it's still a hassle. It's still a lot of work to have your account shut down, to get a new email, to go through the VPN, IP address stuff to try and circumvent blocking and then reestablish yourself. People who do hustles don't like having to deal with the law. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. There you guys have it. That's my video on counterfeits. Hopefully you found something useful.